All right, so hello, my name is Les.
And I am Scandal.
And we are here to do a grinding cast. We haven't done one of those in a while, but the basic premise is it's a podcast while we grind something that we need in a game, and so you can enjoy the visuals or just listen. And what I want to talk about today is All Might. So, we've been watching My Hero Academia, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All the way through season 3 now, or is it
We've gotten through into some of season 3, yes.
Okay, so, and we were there at the beginning. We watched season 1 when it came out. We have not read the manga, but we have done all of the anime, yes?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So, one of the big exciting things about Boku no Hero Academia is what everyone goes off about is, hey, it's a shonen that's not like a shonen, and that's all cool and everything.
And it seems to be mildly subversive, too.
Right. In some ways it is mildly subversive, which is also super cool. But what I hear a lot of people talking about is All Might, because All Might's freaking cool. What a cool mentor slash, adult character. And you don't get a lot of adult characters in, young people's anime that are front and center of anything. So what I haven't seen is a lot of girls or women-identified people talking about All Might. And so I actually looked for that the other day. I went online and onto YouTube and everything, and I went, hey, what do women think of All Might? What do girls think of All Might? And I have to say that I've run into plenty of women artists or women-identified artists that draw All Might. And I've seen plenty of women that write All Might, whether self-shipping or other shipping or anything, they do write about All Might, but they don't talk thoughtfully about All Might, and I kind of want to bitch off in a corner and do so, because I thought All Might was super cool when he first showed up. He's very charming, he's very friendly, he's very determined, but what I hear all the men generally talking about as far as All Might is going, he works so hard, it's amazing, or an experience of going, basically his struggle is so good it's amazing, or he's so powerful you throw him at anything and he beats it.
Right, or going, could he actually beat anything? Like, the largest amount of conversation with individuals who seem to identify as men is largely, like, basically, if you threw him at Superman, who would win? If you threw him at this guy, who would win? If you threw him at Goku, who would win? Which is fine, and those are interesting conversations, but I'm curious because nobody really seems to be discussing much about the character. It's more about his skill set.
Or his powers, essentially. And then they talk about, what does it take to, can you, basically using his hero ability in one way or another. And so what I wanted to do was talk about All Might as a character, as a person.
Right.
And for me, my primary experience when I started getting frustrated with All Might, it happened all at once, and it was kind of a big thing for me because I really liked All Might at first, and I thought his support of Deku was super cool, and going, yes, ultimately you saw a little bit of growth and change where he was like, no, somebody without a quirk can't become a hero, and then he goes back and he's like, yes, you can, and I will help you. And that's awesome. What started bothering me is in reference to his injury, he's been really, really irresponsible. Like, it suggests historically he's been massively irresponsible, but like even on screen he's been really irresponsible in reference to pushing his limit in demanding more of himself than he can physically take. So All Might is disabled. Like, he has a disability. It is a damage disability rather than a genetic disability, but he has one, okay? That is a disabled character.
It is something that inhibits basically what we would consider to be, quote, normal function, whatever that could or couldn't look like. Most people will assume that going around and being in a massive amount of pain is not a normal behavior.
Or
not
being
a lifestyle thing you would like to do. Okay, you've done this to me twice. Why you keep rooting me up into a corner? I don't understand. Sorry, I'm going to go out to the game for 2 seconds.
So, the thing is in reference to real life disabilities as opposed to fictional disabilities, which have to be interpreted and made choices for, even if you're writing from experience, you have to still interpret what it's going to look like and how the character's going to behave. He continues to push against his disability in a damaging way that continues to limit him further and hurt him more all the time. And that doesn't line up well with what he says he wants to be and do, which of course is, somebody who can help people and protect them. In the way that...
Or it does, but it does in a way that's basically destructive.
Okay, it's very short term.
Yes.
He doesn't have any long term, like he feels immature after a time, is what I'm going after. Is that he starts to feel very immature because he will damage himself for very short term, extremely temporary success at the cost of long term help and ability to succeed.
Which is especially interesting. So we had a minor discussion about what All Might's theme. So somebody mentioned it, and I thought it was fascinating. Of going, what seems to be going on here is you have basically a superhero, which is very individualistic. You know, United States, you know, of Smash kind of thing. Ha ha ha, tee whatever. But you've got United States with Japanese bureaucracy, which is very interesting. Actually, because they really, in some ways, they don't work together, and All Might actually, and the superheroes really seem to strongly struggle to basically mesh well. But somehow they also work out, which is fine and dandy, and we don't know how every system would really work until, honestly, in some cases, it's there. Like, for me, I'm going, it seems actually, like, as far as I can tell, that it actually wouldn't work very well, because, like, people like All Might, for example, he would have killed himself.
So, what I'm actually driving at here is that basically the reason I started having problems with All Might as a character, because he's so reckless with his health and his care, and so inconstant with what he says he can and demonstrates that he can and can't do, that it's hard to feel like he means what he says, where he describes that he genuinely wants to continue helping people. And
I'm fine. I'm okay.
Dying here.
I'm quietly going, ah! So I don't know if you haven't noticed, but I keep moving like crazy because I am a panic pinata. I am not good at these games.
Scandal is playing the tablet, and they are very terrified of this game, and they are being a real sport in helping me and us do this. Anyway, so for me, I lost connection to All Might. My suspension of disbelief.
Hang on, I'm getting more health.
Okay, largely went away when essentially he continued to purport that he wanted to help people. He wanted to support the passing down of One for All, and that, you know, help Deku, but then he's constantly willing to get himself killed over one thing or another.
You're kidding. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back that way. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
And it frustrated me because he continues to say, I have this limit where I can only do so much at a time. And then he continues to push the limit and then cut it down further.
And granted, that is a shonen trope, but it's very frustrating from a story point of view because you don't actually have then any upper limits. There's no... You basically go as long as it's interesting.
I was going the other direction.
Oh, really?
I was actually not going, he can push it as long as he wants. What I was going is he pushes it longer, and then he claims to lose it. I can only go 4 hours. Now I can only go 3 hours. Now I can only hold this for like an hour, kind of thing.
Right.
And that he's tearing himself apart for, again, not really short-term gain, because he's not gaining anything by helping people or by, you know, showing off or anything like that, which usually he doesn't hurt himself to show off. Like, forgive that if that was the interpretation. But this experience of I'm going to work really, really hard right now, and it will hurt me enough that I cannot then work more in the future. And so it's just frustrating, where it feels very short-sighted. And what I ultimately came to the conclusion of is that All Might is, because he is isolated, and this comes back to sort of the teamwork mentality of All Might almost always works alone. And there are several people that do work alone, and they're like, yes, I you know, in the hero in the night. I mean,
right? I am the Doc. I'm Bruce Wayne.
It's fine. I would say, but and you get that with, you know, one of his fellow teachers and close friends, Aizawa. But close friend, I say loosely, because
I'm like, God, they do not get along.
They go back and forth about how well and how close.
But that's because, like, Aizawa. So the thing I mentioned though about basically what you have is All Might's very much like a class. He really is that American stereotype of, you know, larger than life, you know, very individualistic hero, right? It's their obligatory ads. You're fine.
I didn't realize.
Anyway, yeah, I'm not forcing them at all.
And so it's like, you have everyone rated on their skills, and you have people rated on teamwork.
He's very Japanese,
right? But you have people rated on their teamwork. You have people rated on, you know, their strength. You have, you know, their stats of how well they work together and do things.
Oh my God, I laughed so hard at those stats.
It says that he has the best possible teamwork
ever.
It's like
a 6S and a 6. So it runs a scale of 1 to 5. Apparently.
And he gets a 6 and everything because he's All Might. Except for
he makes no sense because no, he doesn't.
Teamwork isn't
abysmal actually in some
very good, demonstratingly, functionally.
Well, even like just
on
as
the screen,
intelligence. Like, I'm not saying that he's dumb or unintelligent, basically, or, you know, not capable of learning or anything. But he's very much like, and sure, I love the episodes where he does like work together with the other teachers, which you get to see. But it's like, holy cow. like, he's supposed to be smarter than
He's
the
supposed to be
principal.
smarter than the principal,
Who's supposed to have specifically a quirk that makes him so
Whose
incredibly
quirk?
smart.
His quirk is intelligence, and All Might's supposed to be smarter. And so the thing is what I come down to is All Might, Toshinori Yagi, is immature. He's deeply immature in his behavior of planning and organizing himself because he's so passionate about, essentially emotionally passionate, that he cannot choose thoughtfully for his future experience, for what he's, wanting to do and be. He can't seem to do long-term planning. And even in reference to Midoriya and picking out his successor, who he does support and is there for largely, he still has a problem with long-term planning of going, there are several times where you could have completely killed yourself off and he would have had no support or help at all. And
honestly, that's the thing I think that makes me angry even about Midoriya. So even with as much as, like, sure, I loved him initially to begin with.
I was
like,
going to save this conversation for another
fine.
one. I'm going to tear apart Midoriya in another video.
You're like, well,
now,
do this
so
later.
what I say is, in general, I do like the series. I like the first season best of all. And then I feel like it diverts more into traditional shonen after that. Like, there is more focus on combat and people being irresponsible and marathons of, this could have been solved if people communicated.
Whoops. Well, excuse me.
Right. All right, well, pardon the game.
So I apologize, guys.
Anyway, so it's this experience of going, it ultimately, falls into a more traditional shonen by focusing more on that, but the lack of communication bothers me too. And that All Might doesn't always help with the lack of communication, in the sense that he's supposed to be there and close to and supporting, Midoriya. He's supposed to be helping Deku, and whenever Deku is making a dumb choice, he never goes to All Might, so somehow All Might has not made himself feel or seem available to him to ask, consult, and talk to, as well as he doesn't go and actually assure whatever's happening is actually happening.
Right.
So there's a lot of times where communication more from All Might would have helped him and helped other people. But he also seems to have this incredible bent of, I will do this alone. No matter what it is, I will succeed alone. He doesn't seem to work on a team. I mean, you've got All for One that he needs to defeat, except for he really sees it as, I need to defeat it. It's framed as almost an allegorical personal demon, even though it's an actual man that's actually affecting the world, and the world actually being just Japan.
Right.
And so it's painted as this huge, massive problem that is All Might's personal problem. And I'm going, the story filters you in really hard to this experience of All Might has, is personally responsible for solving this problem by himself. And that All for One really plays into that, really is like, yes, I will fight only All Might, and this is the thing I am doing, and this is what this is about.
Right.
And it's frustrating for me because, again, it pulls me into this experience of going, seems like All Might is very emotionally immature, or, like just that he is not very mature as a character or very developed. That there's this very strong experience of going, he is making decisions and pushing other people into them based on, I have to be an island. And it takes work to develop social connection. As children, as infants, we are actually very, very insular. We go through a phase in development, and this shows some of my history, majoring in psychology, that we go through a phase in development where we do independent play and where we're not aware of the world outside of ourselves, as well as where we don't connect to other people being people. Like, there's not only lack of self-awareness, but there's lack of other awareness. And so developing communication and relationships with other people is maturity. Now, this is not to say that anyone with social anxiety or anyone who has troubles with it is bad. It's just, that is how we develop, that is how we define human maturity, being able to work with and connect to other people, because we literally grow into it where we start without it from infancy, And for him, it seems like he hasn't really grown into it. And I don't know if it's the author simply contriving, I want to get him alone and have him need to do this by himself for the sake of interesting drama, and that's how a story narrative should go.
Right.
Or if it's more like an experience of, it worked. Of going, this is just who he is as a person, and this is how I'm going to write him. But why don't any of the people who care about him, especially when he's injured and they know what's socially at stake as well as what's physically at stake with their friend or their coworker or whatever else is, actually address him about his own well-being? And I know it can be very hard to tell someone you love or care about that they need to take care of themselves differently or better, because it is their body, you know? But it's like, when you realize that you have a public platform that you are also dealing with, you have a bigger responsibility to the world than to yourself. And that's part of what drives him, that bigger responsibility to the world and than himself, except that he's not treating it, in my interpretation, with respect. And it's very hard to say that I love how over the top All Might is. I love how larger than life he is. I love the I am entering the room like a normal person. Like, he's very fun, and he's
for me, honestly, going off of that, because I'm just listening to this mostly because I find it to be very interesting, but going like, I love the fact of like somebody pointing out, and it's kind of true, of All Might actually, though, past a point, can't be All Might as much as everybody believes he is. Like, he can't be All Might enough.
That he has become sort of a
caricature
figure, a caricature of himself.
And the thing is, well, and not necessarily even a caricature, because I suppose people won't take caricatures, but it really is this enormous, massive, basically legend that he has developed of himself that he can't be anymore, that he isn't, and it's almost out of his control. And it's sort of this helplessness that I think is very interesting. So I'm like, I still like this character for sure, but I'm also certainly frustrated by him as well. You know, I know I could go that way.
Anyway, and so that's sort of the frustration that I've been having with All Might, is going, you feel like you've isolated yourself so hard into the I will be the one single thing that solves all the problems by myself, the symbol of peace alone in a void, that he has stayed emotionally immature. But it also doesn't make sense with the amount that he's had to work with people. Right. The amount that he's been required to, build his own hero agency, that he's been required to, work with other, build friendships. The fact that he has a good friend on the police force. The fact that he's friends with the principal.
But then so the thing is I also feel like All Might is filled with a lot of controversial statements. Like, they directly contradict each other.
Contradictory statements.
So not controversial, contradictory.
Okay.
They're paradoxical almost in their existence. Of going, nobody knows anything about All Might, all these people don't know, but then suddenly you have the nurse that knows that All Might is basically dying, as it were. The image of All Might is going to end up going if he goes. You have the image of, only one friend, his friend on the who's the detective, is the only one who knows, and yet there's this entire scene where they're setting up with seeing All for One for the first time,
and the entire police force
is talking about it, and you're like, that's not one normal person. That is multiple people.
So you have a large body of people, and it's even implied that the government at large knows that he is damaged in the way that he is, because the government runs, the limitations of and the costume stipulations of the heroes.
You would have to know.
So they have to know, let alone his medical care was done in a facility where,
What are you doing? You're going to tell everybody, this isn't the guy that it looks like? We wiped all their memories, and maybe they'll address it later, and sure, this is, and also some people just going, well, it doesn't matter that much, and I'm going, but it does, because you're also then contradicting like historian, him going, this is the thing, and you're like, and yeah, there are all these people,
but so many people know, and no one knows how this quirk works except for a lot of people.
And there's a level of almost so the thing is why I was pointing out the bureaucratic thing is going, even for All Might, is it doesn't work like that. Even people who are that heavily invested in bureaucratic, society, trying to preserve the image of All Might is also like, oh my god, I couldn't stop telling my, my 5-year-old or whatever that holy shit, All Might is dying.
Or you
are they overheard me or whatever? Like, they don't even have to do it because they're being mean or because they're trying to get him in trouble or trying to get a story or whatever it might be, trying to get attention. It could literally just be because they were worried, and they started talking to their friends and going, "Oh my God, there's this person in my life that I know, and he's dying."
And he's super important. But even going beyond the personal care and love for this person of, I want you to protect yourself and I want you to keep living.
Right.
There's an experience of going, All Might is this pillar of society, which is a lot what, the League of Villains is arguing is the problem, right? They're making that the problem.
Uh-huh.
But that is what he cares about. And if that is what he cares about, he wants to be it. And the people around him are supporting him in being it. The government is supporting him in being it. His friends are supporting him in being it. The police force, which is connected to the government, is helping him in being it. And yet none of them
He's a monolith,
are
and yet
trying-
everyone is involved.
And yet everyone is involved. And so you have this experience of this paradox of everyone's involved, but no one has an opinion. And no one will talk to him about his safety or his self-care or his responsibility to other people. One of the major themes of like social emotional conflict amongst people who love each other is how you take care of yourself and how you handle your health. I mean, if you've ever seen The Fountain, the entire movie is about that.
God, it's sad.
Going,
I really like that movie.
I say it is, but as I say, but there's a lot of stories that thematically are about that because the people who love you care about your well-being, but they also love their society. And anyone who's connected to the bigger society at large, which is what All Might is connected to and what he purports to care about,
If you're
everyone else who cares about that too would drive him that way. If there's ever been any story where someone wanted to get into politics, they were always caring about their image, but they were also caring about their functional ability to maintain that image. And his health is the maintenance of that image.
It is.
And so you
and
have
the more that he screws with it, I feel like you'd have people be livid about that, going, what are you doing? You are messing yourself up, and going, I'm doing it for you. You're basically blaming other people for your bad self-care.
As I say, how could you
However,
support him in making the choices he makes where he continues to reduce his limit, where he continues to hurt himself, and let him be completely independent instead of going, you are a public figure of great importance. You now have become essentially a social property. And so it is our job as a social group to manage
Which I think would be fascinating if they would actually interact with it. God, can you imagine people talking about that, going, hey, by the way, we're all the social club here to basically support the image of All Might? Like, what that actually looks like, what it looks like. I mean, because I know we joke about it in terms of, you know, here's like the political images of people today. But so one of the ideas I thought was fascinating about My Hero Academia is quite literally how much they are not only just like superheroes, they're not only political figures, because they're all supported by the government, right? Because they are government officials. They are basically glorified. Like I laughed about it, going, they're glorified police in their own way, but they're celebrity police.
They are,
which is fascinating and weird, and seems like a massive contradiction, and also seems kind of terrifying, honestly. But
what are you? I'm a superhero. Oh, I mean, I'm a celebrity policeman.
Yeah, pretty much. And going, that actually is a whole process. That's
Again,
not just it's just interesting to me. And then also going, and then all these people are basically going to be like, we all know about how you're screwing yourself up, but you know,
but we're not going to interact
fine.
because you yourself take care of you. Again, I don't understand how he stays so insular and so self-contained and so separate from everyone else, in that you never see him have any just private social interaction with anyone, but you also never see anyone reprimanding him for misusing his power, which is essentially a public property.
I love that the one reprimand that I've seen so far that I can recall off the top of my head really strongly seems to be, how dare you not control your power better? Which I laughed about.
You beat up teenagers, how dare you?
I mean, let alone the fact that Boku no Hero Academia cannot decide what people's powers are. So I hate to say that people are like, no, this thing. You're like, people are jumping off walls.
Everyone
can jump 600 feet
in the air, even if it's not to do with their quirk at all.
What I am is I'm really strong, unless you're a girl.
I was saying, and I think
for the most part,
people cannot jump that high or that far at all. And without extensive training, they can't even jump up a flight of steps. A normal, healthy, athletic, skilled person cannot just jump up a flight of steps.
Yep, pretty much.
So, on another note, and wrapping this up, because this has been, close to 30 minutes, I just wanted to talk about how that was my take on All Might. And I was frustrated that the only women that I'd seen interacting with All Might was basically he's a sex symbol. He's this big hot guy, and I kind of just want to ship him with somebody, or, some experience of shipping him, or they basically don't interact, and that frustrates me, because there are a lot of men out there talking about All Might, but it also bothers me that there are a lot of men out there talking about All Might, and no one's really talking about his experience as a person or character that I've been able to find. And if you know a video or someone who has talked about it, I would love to be pointed in that direction, because again, most of what I have heard is essentially his struggle with his power and his own personal demons is what's so important about him, because he's dying.
Right.
And that inspires me because I hurt and I'm fighting battles too, and that's cool. Except for I feel like, again, he's fighting them in an immature and irresponsible fashion based on what he says his values are. And I always work from what people say their own values are, from what they purport to find most important, which is why I'm going to bitch off about Midoriya next in another video. So this has been a Grinding Cast.
And I have been Scandal.
And I have been Lies, and thank you for listening to me. And if you have thoughts on All Might, I would love to hear them. So please put them down in the comments or, message us. Let us know what your opinions are. And if you have other people, or especially if you are other women who have just talked about All Might's character and who he is and what you think about that, I would love to hear it.
Quite.
Take care of yourselves out there, and goodbye.